Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, cool. So I'm Jasmine. This is the MassIFF Film Festival. We're going to be talking about the process of the script writing to the actual production of the films. So I would like each of you ladies to introduce yourselves and what film you have.
Hi, my name is Alecia Batson. My film, which I refer to as Project 1, screens in the middle of Block 10 this evening. It's a 20-minute film in this case, but it's intended to be a looped video art installation.
I'm Diana Porter. My film is Heartbeat and is also showing in the final block.
My name is Andrea Wolanin, and my film is From Within, and it is also showing in the final block.
And can each of you guys go through the process from writing your film to the actual production, why you chose the talent that you chose, like scouting spaces and everything?
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. But, in my case, I was fortunate to be the recipient of the Women in Film Fellowship from the Shawnee Memorial Film Foundation. And interestingly, that fellowship is granted only to women who have never made a film before. Which is somewhat counterintuitive, I think, on both a fellowship front, but also on a filmmaking front. But it's also really forward-thinking, because as we all know, there is a disparity in gender representation, both in front of and behind the camera. So, having never made a film before, I tasked myself with executing as many of the aspects of filmmaking as possible. So from coming up with some type of storyboard for the visual concept that I already had in my mind, to writing the script, to seeing that it was registered, to handling all of the necessary paperwork. As a professional actor, I'm with SAG-AFTRA, so this project had to be executed under a SAG-AFTRA agreement. Then I also shot everything, I starred in it. I hired one person to execute, I guess you would call it the voiceover for the project. And then I hired someone to edit because I knew that editing was way beyond my forte. So my approach was to educate myself about these various facets of the filmmaking process. And in this process, the concept of having to write a screenplay allowed me not only to codify the concept that I had developed a few years before, but it helped me to realize that this in fact is a non-linear, non-film. And it's intended to be shown in a looped video installation format. So what you'll see today is designed specifically for a film presentation, so you'll have a start to finish. But if it were installed somewhere, it would actually be on endless loop, and someone could step in anywhere at any time with headphones, step into the experience, and then the experience.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
You can tell us
She's
about
so prepared. I'm winging it. So my film kind of started with Andrea, in a way. Andrea approached me in late 2016 because she was trying to get together with other filmmakers to make films under the premise of what is one law you could possibly conceive of the new administration enacting and take it to its worst possible conclusion. And I had never made a film before. I'd worked with Andrea before as an actor and as crew with her as well.
And a writer.
And a writer. But I immediately said to her, dibs on women's healthcare, I have a story. And I think maybe a week later, I had like regurgitated a script and sent it to her, and she gave me like 2 edits back. And I kept being like, shouldn't I? But I'm gonna change this. And she was like, no, stop it. Just make the thing, make the thing, make the thing. And a lot of the story came from my own experience going through miscarriages before having my son. And the experience in this country where women's ability to have a child is being elevated to a place of... There have been discussions where the fact that I had 2 miscarriages, people made me feel like a murderer. So in my film, I kind of explore that a little. casting was fantastic. I had Andrea as my assistant director, co-producer, and we wanted to have a very diverse cast and pull from both some of the wonderful actors that I know and new actors I've never worked with before. And everybody, I had so many wonderful auditions. There's so much local talent to choose from. It was really fantastic. And we managed to find a hospital room at a local nursing college, which was, I mean, when you're shooting on a small budget and you write a script inside a hospital, you were setting yourself up for problems. And I kicked myself many times for doing that, but we somehow pulled it off in the end, and very happy.
I was actually lucky too, because that place no longer allows you to film there. So
They learned their lesson.
yeah. We didn't do anything.
Sorry for interrupting. And do you guys work on films together on this film?
In different, I feel different capacities and different forms of partnership. She was in my second film as an actress, and I helped produce her first film as a writer, which had a different director that she also starred in, and then I helped produce this one and worked as an AD. And she was my third film too as an actress. Cleaning house.
All right, yeah.
So, yeah, we've worked together a lot.
And
over
the
the
assistant
years.
director.
And she assistant directed the film that I have here today.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
And can you talk about the process of writing that film and taking that to production?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the film here today I have is From Within. And so this piece is sort of both a test for a feature that I'm hoping to write, as well as a practice for myself in this feature that I'm starting to write, where I'm trying to overlay magical realism into it. A little bit about my background is I'm half Latino, and so magical realism has been very present in my own consumption of art in my life, but also growing up in the U.S. To a Latino mother. I'm very aware of how it can not work when presenting to American audiences or United States audiences, and then also when it works very well. Like, for instance, Harry Gilliam's Brazil is made by an Anglo person, but has a magical realism layer to it that works really well. So it was trying to figure out, this piece very specifically was me experimenting with that and seeing how I could make it work. So once I wrote the script, I went about casting it and arranging crew for it and everything like that. This one is my biggest learning on this was casting, because I cast Jennifer LaFleur in it, who is a SAG-AFTRA actress who has been in a few significant productions in supporting roles, and Tristan Risk, who's in a lot of bigger horror movies as well. And so it was definitely my biggest production in terms of the talent there. But yeah, I think that was sort of my biggest learning from it, was that a lot of times you just have to ask, and it takes a lot of asks to get the right cast sometimes if you're going for bigger names, because I went to quite a few people who wanted, $3,000 a day, and that's not within my budget by any means. And with Jennifer, I was lucky enough that she gave me a reduced rate, because it meant she could come here and also visit family, because she's from the area. So I was able to get a bigger actress by finding a way to make it incentivized for her beyond the money.
That's great. And if you can introduce yourself and tell us about the film that you have here today, and what the process was like from writing to production and finding your talent in the film.
Yeah, sure. I'm Jenna. I'm the director, producer, writer, and lead actress of The Golden Age. It's a period drama set in the 60s. And it's a tribute to artists who changed the world at the time. So obviously there are many things to talk about. But I think something really specific about this film is that the star of the film, in a way, is Saint-Tropez. The cast is unknown. I'm the lead actress, and Sebastian, the lead actor, is right here. So we are unknown. However, the village of Saint-Tropez is really famous around the world. And we were very lucky that to recreate this atmosphere of the 60s, it was really important that it was very authentic. So for me as a director, I wanted the audience to be able, when they see the film, to really feel how it was at the time, or relive it if you're lucky enough that they actually knew this atmosphere. I'm too young to be able to know how it really felt. But I really wanted the audience to see it in a lot of authenticity. So this is why we were very lucky. We shot in 35 exceptional locations across south of France, Paris, and the US. There are a lot of things we could talk about. I think an anecdote that's quite appealing is that I wanted this film to happen very soon because things are changing. There are things that don't change, like the magic of cinema, but things like villages, like Saint-Tropez change. And the opening of the film, we shot in and around the Notre Dame Cathedral. And so the very short of the film is the cathedral, and at the very end of the post, we saw the events in Paris in April. And so I didn't know that the cathedral would change, but we were the very last drama that actually shot there. So that was very moving for all of us. And I think it's just amazing, just like you guys are doing. It can be very hard, obviously, but it's important because we pay tribute to characters, we pay tribute to people's stories. I interviewed so many people to direct, write this film, act, and also produce, and it just feels incredible to be able to reflect this world and to pay those tributes that are very, very magical and precious.
That's amazing. Can you talk about the challenges that you have encountered during the entire production process? Because you did say it was filmed in multiple cities.
Absolutely, very true. It was filmed, just to briefly sum it up, we filmed about 70% of the film around south of France. So mainly Saint-Tropez and Ramatuelle. And also all of the opening is set in Paris, and we also filmed in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. So if that's true, it's quite challenging because 35 locations for an indie movie, it's true, it's a lot. So you need to be very prepared and very organized. So my production coordinator, Patty, who's filming right here, helped me with all that. She's amazing. Because obviously it's a lot of preparation, so it's a very big challenge because you really need to make sure, usually on an indie feature, you don't necessarily have a lot of budget, so it needs to be very prepared, so you make sure you lose no time, because transfers cost you a lot of time. Any minute you spend not filming is not a problem, but it's precious, so really all those transfers are really important, but it's very organized. So that was a great challenge, but it was so incredible. We shot in the most magical places I can think of. I'm very lucky, we got all my #1 locations of the Eiffel Tower, a period restaurant in Paris. We shot in a period train, a station. We shot, if you guys love movies, maybe you know Brigitte Bardot and God Created Woman. Well, if you remember this film, everywhere where we shot, it's so special. All around the harbor, on the beaches of Ramatuelle. I don't know if you guys know the Gendarme de Saint-Tropez, the policeman in Saint-Tropez, maybe some of you will. It's very, very famous 60s series in France. So we shot where we shot there. Ramatuelle is obviously very special. So we even rebuilt a Hollywood studio from the 60s, so that was quite a challenge. So it's just feel incredible. I fell in love with the village Saint-Tropez and Ramatuelle as soon as I arrived. For those of you who've been in Paris, maybe you also fell in love with the city. I've been staying there all my life and I'm still in love with it. So I wanted the film, The Golden Age, to really recreate that from the 60s. So this is what you can enjoy when you see the film.
And Diana, what were the challenges that you had faced during filming? You did say it was filmed in a nursing school, correct?
Yeah, actually filming in this school went incredibly smoothly. They were great. I think a lot of the challenges came from my own inexperience. There's a chase scene, and I really didn't do enough research in how to film a foot chase. And like, as we were shooting it, I was like, I really know, I'm smarter than this. I should have done more research. Why didn't I do more research? And a lot of things cropped up in post-production. I don't feel like a lot of people talk about post-production and what a slog it can be. And I was actually at a different film festival for a film that I was acting in, and ended up talking to a filmmaker I'd never met before. And I said, yeah, I'm editing my film, and I think it's terrible. I think I hate it. And he goes, oh, you're on the right track then. And I said, what? He goes, oh no, all filmmakers do that. Like, it's like a thing. Like, we all hate our film at this point, so you're about to have a breakthrough. And he was right. And I went home and I kept at it. And but there was a lot of, oh God, I need somebody to color. And I had almost no money. It was the money, I had a $1,000 budget, and I had to rent a nursing school. So almost all the money went to that and to paying for food. And luckily I have a really wonderful, talented friends who stepped up to be a part of the project. But then it was figuring out who had what talents and would be willing and able to help. And I got very lucky in some places. A wonderful composer I know in Montreal, I sent the film to them, and they responded so enthusiastically wanting to be a part of the project that they actually agreed to hire an orchestra in order to compose the way they wanted to compose. So there were problems, but those problems often turned into opportunities.
And if you can talk about some of the challenges that you had during your film process as well.
Sure. So some of the inspirational elements for this particular video installation are elements of slow film and art film. So nearly all the shots are static shots intentionally. But for me, one of the biggest challenges as an independent woman was actually carving out the time to be able to do this. Because in addition to being in 2 consecutive shows at the time that I was in production for this project, I was also still working 40 to 50 hours a week. And then I needed to find the time to actually set up the camera, set up the shots, do the test shots, make sure that I had recorded everything. So I would find myself working in blocks that accommodated the other things that I had to achieve during the day. One solution that comes to mind is I had a performance one Sunday morning that I had to be available starting at 8:15. So I got up at 4:30, I set up the shot, I executed the entire shot, then I downloaded it to my computer, then I got ready, and then I went and I sang at 7:45. So it means that, I guess, for any project that you feel really passionate about, you have to be willing to do what it takes in order to execute that. Would I have wanted to be filming at 4:30 and then working for 10 hours? No, probably not. But that's what it required, so that's what I did.
And then can you describe some of the challenges that you had faced during shooting this film and some of the other challenges that you may have encountered during the previous ones as well?
To Diana's point about post-production, I definitely less so on my first film because it was so exciting to see something I had made on the screen, and because it was a larger project. But with my second film that I created, it was really all from my own perspective, and I had such big hopes for it. And I got the first cut back, and I literally closed my computer and went and cried for 2 hours, and then watched it again and cried a little more, and then sent notes to my editor that did not say, I hate this, I never want to make another movie again, because I was trying to be more upbeat for his sake. But with that one too, that one I feel was a big learning experience. I had a very inexperienced cast. I had written a 20-page script. I was very ambitious for it being my second short film with a pretty small crew. And it had a lot of it had more special effects than I think any of my other pieces had. It had, there was an amputation in it, so it had an amputated arm we had to create as well. it was very challenging because I was trying to film 20 minutes in 4 days, and that's a lot when it's especially when it's a drama or a narrative film. And with inexperienced actors, it was a lot. So I learned that one of the things that I learned was really getting a feel for how long certain shots take. And one of the things that's helped me learn that is by producing other directors and other writers' films. Because the more I do it, the more I see different directors take different amounts of time, but it's always around the same block. So I've learned to over budget the time, and also how much time, a shot of somebody's face, a reaction shot can take, as opposed to a scene where people have a back and forth without the camera moving or switching. So I feel like that those are definitely challenges that I've learned along the way, is budgeting time, keeping days to about 8 hours, because as much as I like shooting 12-hour days, it does not work when your actors are exhausted and have a giggling fit for 20 minutes, and then you can't shoot that scene. So yeah, I think really learning that your first cut is going to be miserable, that it's harder for actors to work as long as a director necessarily, because you're not the one emoting. In some ways you are, but they're the ones actually having to do it per what you see in your head, so it's harder for them. So knowing that they have less, can go for a longer time.
Endurance?
Stamina, I guess. They have less emotional stamina because they're using so much of it during the day. And really learning to judge how long certain shots take. Those I think are the important things I've learned.
And what were some of the successes that you guys had during this film process? Was there anything that you were really proud of yourself for doing that's for the first time filmmakers that are here?
I'll start. Having Andrea do my schedule, she's super good at it.
Thank you.
My lead actress, Bernice Keel, she is incredible. I feel like casting her was one of the best things I did as a director. She just did an incredibly beautiful job, and we worked together really well. So that really stands out. And because I say this to other filmmakers, I'll say it to myself. Finishing. Actually completing the film, getting it out there, and as of tonight, having people see it. That is something to be celebrated, and we all should kind of pat ourselves on the back, because it is a momentous task. You put a lot into it, and a lot of people do give up. A lot of people do get their first edit back and say, well, that was trash, I wasted a lot of money, and throw in the towel. So completing is probably my biggest success.
What was your success for this one?
If I were to pick a particular element to define as successful, I guess it would be, in most cases, correctly capturing the vision that I had mentally. Before I had a screenplay, before I had the idea that it was a looped video installation with a nonlinear narrative, I had these visions of what the shots would be. And in nearly all the cases, I was able to achieve what I wanted. And that was very pleasing to me from an artistic perspective, because I knew that what I was seeing is what you will see. There was one shot that I wasn't able to achieve simply because one of the tasks that I gave myself was to use only off-the-shelf equipment that anybody on the street could afford. So what you will see was shot on an iPhone 6. And so I wasn't able to achieve one particular shot, but I'm not going to tell you what that was, because I think within the course of the work, it still suits the message that someone might take away from it.
And what was your inspiration for this film?
I guess I'd have to say the inspiration came from a 3-day conference that I attended at MIT in 2015. It was called Infinite Record, and it explored artistically the concept of memory and archive and storage and the different media or approaches that can be used when addressing this idea of memory. And as I was sitting there through this conference, I started to have these mental just pictures in my mind. I didn't know what they were, but I just stored them because I thought maybe I'll need these later. And then in 2017, I thought, maybe I should just attend a screenplay workshop. And I was very fortunate to be accepted to the Woods Hole Film Festival Screenwriter Symposium. And I was tremendously fortunate in the fact that the people that I was with in this very dedicated room were really committed writers to their form, whether it was long-form drama or short-form television comedy or children's television. These people really believed in what they were doing. And I look back on that experience. I didn't have a screenplay, and I literally just took notes as I was listening to people talk about the process. And so being able to take that process and then apply it to, I guess, write the vision that I had on paper, it was really very helpful.
And you said that you interviewed a lot of people for your film, so what was your inspiration for finding the directors and writing the screenplay?
Sorry, the director and?
Yeah. Well, because I know you're the director,
yes,
but like
yes.
for the screenplay process, like, what was your inspiration for that?
Oh, I think there were definitely two. The first one is that I felt every morning I read the news, so usually it can be in the newspapers or even on my phone, and I've always felt very concerned about what is happening in this world because there are many things that are terrible happening. So in a way it really affected me. And I realized two things. The first thing is that I realized I was definitely not the only one, because I think definitely, in a way, even if we don't want to access the news, if you just open your phone, it will pop up on you. And also there is another thing I realized is that in the 60s, people, I think, had the same feeling. The movie is set, the Golden Age is set in 1967, and it's right after the two world wars. And it was definitely a transition time. Woodstock, Isle of Wight, also in Paris, there were the Paris riot in 1968. And people, especially the youth, were so tired of war. And it's a moment when the youth said, all these great inventions that we enjoy now from the two world wars, they're great, but this time we're not gonna make war happen with it. So recently I watched a documentary on Netflix which is called How the Beatles Changed the World. And I thought it's really what the film is about, the Golden Age, because it's so true, they arrived right at the right time, and it's also part of the success. I love this anecdote that in 1964, it was in September, the Beatles were just supposed to be this other band that was very successful. And when they arrived in Jacksonville, it was their summer tour. They said, we're not gonna play in front of a segregated audience. I think it's John Lennon in particular who said that. They said, we never did it before, we're not gonna do it today. And we can think it was normal because they're famous, but at the time they were just another band. And really, when you're famous, you have so much more to lose. When you're up there, it's much harder, and you imagine the manager, the pressures from the whole business team behind it, but they said no. And for the very first time in Jacksonville, in September 1964, we played in front of a normal audience. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, I forgot the question. So I know my inspiration, so this is it. I just find it so incredible. I wanted to pay tribute to artists who changed this world. And I wanted to pay tribute not only to artists who managed to make it happen, who succeed to change this world. I wanted to pay tribute to everyone who tries, because there are so many people who try, who lose so much, and we never hear of them, but at least they try. And I think it's very important. So I think this was definitely my biggest inspiration. The other inspiration is Saint-Tropez, because I don't know if any of us have ever been, but it's just the most magical place in the world. It has this very special light, this natural, very magical light. Obviously Paris is very inspiring, even LA. And at the time, now Saint-Tropez is quite famous because so many tourists go during the summer. It's just such a magical village. But actually, in the 60s, for instance, even in post-production a few months ago, I was meeting with Sally Kirkland, who won a Golden Globe and was Oscar nominated for her role as Anna. And she told me that it's exactly as it was. In the 60s, before her filming in Italy, she would have coffee with Catherine Deneuve, Demoiselle de Rochefort, did Saint-Tropez, and everyone would go, like from all over the world, singers, musicians, people from literature world, really any artist would pass by there and kind of reinvent things. And so this is where I thought really this is the connection. These are my two inspirations. How to pay tribute in this magical village to all the artists anyone who tried to change this world that is getting crazy.
Diana, can you talk about the screenwriting process for your film? Because you did mention that it was very personal for you.
Yeah, it was way personal. There is actually, there is a scene that is almost word for word what I went through when I was having a miscarriage. And it really, and this is how I've written other films that weren't as personal as well. I kind of think about the idea. I come up with the concept, I have the general idea of the story, and then when I'm driving or I'm in the shower or I'm cooking or gardening or whatever I'm doing, I'm just mulling it over. And then one day, suddenly, it's somewhere near complete in my head, and I sit down and I start typing. And I generally get 90% of the way there in one night. I just sit down and I write it, and I'm an insomniac, so I have lots of time to do that. My husband goes to bed at like 9:30, and then I just spend the next 6 hours typing. I did edit, and I got feedback from Andrea and from some other filmmakers, and I wish I had edited more, but I think that's just like the filmmaker thing of it's never perfect. But it was really just piecing it together and being like, ooh, and I want to represent that perspective. How can I get that? And it would all happen in the car, and then I kind of just store it in my memory, and then later on in that day when I'm, at the gym or whatever, I'm like, oh, right, okay, so I wanted to explore that perspective. How can I explore that? And even, a lot of the writing happens in the editing process. I had a very divisive ending that I ended up pulling at the last minute because I sent it to a friend who's a leader in the Black Lives Matter movement and said, hey, could you give me feedback on this? And I appreciate if you don't have the emotional bandwidth for this and want no part of it, feel free to say no, but I really would like your perspective. And she wrote back and she was like, I think you will be traumatizing people you do not intend to be traumatizing. I know what you're doing and I appreciate what you're trying to do, but this is going to hit some of your audience the wrong way. It's like, okay, and pulled that ending right out. And I'm glad I did. I don't think it was necessary. It would have been a thing, but I don't think it hurt the film at all. So there was a lot of taking things out. A lot of the editing happened after the shoot.
And what was your screenwriting process like?
I'm
trying to remember now.
It's a little improv.
Yeah, we just shut up. That's so funny. I can't remember my screenwriting process for this really. For other pieces, usually what I've done is I have a general idea, and then I sit down and write. Often I'll block off a large part of the day and sit down and write, especially for short films. I'm currently writing my first feature length and have been for probably 2 years now. And with that, it's much more doing it regularly every day and putting aside an hour, 2 hours every day to work on it. Because there's so many moving parts when you get a feature film. I feel that you have to keep yourself from branching out too far. And so that's a little trickier and takes a little more thought, I find. And then, so for most short films, though, I feel like I can usually get them out, because it feels to me like most of my short films have been one idea that I'm getting down into a film, and then I sit down and write them out, and it works.
So I'm going to open it up to questions. If any of you guys in the audience do have questions for these ladies up here. Yes, you're in the front.
Listening to the four of you, I wasn't really sure, so I'm just going to ask, did any of you go to film school?
I have not been to film school.
Okay.
I
So,
did.
so basically you all did this without the benefit of any kind of film education in terms of directing or producing or anything like that?
I went to film school and I work full-time as a producer, and it was my day job.
No, I mean, I think it's amazing that you guys made your films without the, because often when you go to film school, I went to NYU for a short period of time, you have a community that you can draw on that makes things a little bit easier. So I think the four of you did an amazing job. You had to form your own network of people on your own and make the films basically by yourselves.
I think I was very fortunate because I had many years as an actress and not just as an actress, but I've assistant directed, script supervised, PA'd. And I've worked with so many great directors, including ones that did go to film school, like Andrea and others, and some that didn't, like Skip. And I got to pull from their knowledge, and I was working on a feature film as a stand-in right before I shot this, and I got to ask the Oscar-winning cinematographer and the director questions and be like, hey guys, so I'm never going to see you again, so I'm going to go out on a limb and ask for your advice on how to shoot this stupid little movie I'm about to shoot. And everybody was so wonderfully giving. One of the great things about most artists is they want to support other artists. They've been there, they know how hard it is, and they want to save you their mistakes. So just reaching out, and even my editor, I had worked with him both as a producer and as an actor, and he had been a cinematographer, editor, and director, writer, in things that I had worked on. Like, we worked together in a number of capacities and will continue to work together. We have another project we're shooting this year. But I can lean on him. Like, anytime I email him, he's right there for me and answers my questions in a informative way without making me feel like an idiot. So he has a very special gift for teaching.
Does anybody else have questions?
I have a question, and it's actually piggybacking off of the question that this young lady just asked. I know that there's a common misperception that you actually need a budget in order to make a project work. For those of you that didn't have a large budget, what are some of the secrets that you guys can provide to us as an audience for how to complete your project with minimal cash?
So in my case, I did have a minimal budget. Part of my budget was funded through the film fellowship that I received from the Shauna Shea Memorial Foundation, and then the rest of it I filled in. So I tasked myself with spending no more than about $1,200 for this entire work. And because I was filing all of the paperwork with SAG-AFTRA so that the project was appropriately covered, one of the elements that required, the paperwork required, was in fact a budget. So having not had to make a budget before, it was really helpful to have sample budgets from other films that I could cite to see how and where the majority of that funding was going. As a recipient of the fellowship, I also had access to Skip and the other, other past recipients of the fellowship, so that I could find out how they had gone about budgeting, where the majority of their budget went, where they would spend less money, and in order to save money. I think for those who've not made a film before, who are trying to make a film on a small budget, one of the best things you can do is really work with what you have. Don't say, oh, I'm going to shoot my first project on a Red camera, because that's just $1 bajillion. But tasking myself with using only the equipment that I already had available to myself, which included an iPhone 6, which included the stand that I use to record all of my own self-tape auditions when I'm auditioning for other people's projects. Making use of that, I think, is a great way to really force yourself to extend your creativity, because then you must work within the limits of what you have in order to execute your vision.
I think it, for me, it ties back to what I was saying earlier about learning from people. Build your community. I really feel like I have only been able to make this film because of all the wonderful people in my community that are so supportive. And once you've built that community, be good to that community. Be giving and help them and show up for them like they show up for you. And it helps if you can cook.
I found, to build on that idea, one of the things that I've done is I try to be as giving as I can with my time and my capabilities.
And she is.
You know, I PA on so many films, and I've been producing at a local television station for 10 years now. So, you know, I take on any role, big or small, whatever people need. I've done crafty, I've done everything. So by that knowledge that I have doing that and giving that to other people, then I get, you know, other directors are willing to do free sound for me, or free cinematography, or free acting, because we have that trade, especially in a small community like this, where the film business has not yet taken off in the way that it has in New York or LA. There's a lot more of that sort of trading talents and skill sets that allows us to really cut our budgets down. And also, I probably shouldn't recommend this, but my last film, the entire wardrobe was returned to Amazon after. It all didn't fit. I don't know how.
Some of the props were returned to Savers for my
Yeah.
film. Savers! Oh yeah. No money. We talked about this.
Poor Savers. Are there any other questions out there? Yes, you.
Thank you for all being here and sharing your expertise. I've made, I've lost count, maybe 8 or 10 short films, and I mean really short, because I've limited myself to one location and not filmed outside. And I've kept the cost extremely low, just maybe $30 a day, and that was all food that I made. So the thought of having a budget is like inconceivable to me. So I would really love to hear, especially, is it Jenna?
Yes.
Because you made a feature length, I would really love to hear the process that happens to obtain funding.
Yes, I think what you just mentioned is really important, is that, as these both ladies said, it's really important to be very realistic. Like, for instance, if you shoot your feature film in mainly one location, it's very different from shooting a period drama or an action movie. You can keep your cost maybe a bit low. So I think the first thing is really to be very realistic in terms of what you do. Obviously, if you have 40 locations, it's not having one location. If you're also very demanding, like you have a lot of characters, you really want to direct a film which involves a script with a lot of characters, then that's more actor, that's more crew. So then it's probably more budget, more work than if it's a bit smaller. But I think also the good thing is that there is a second point that is happening now, is that there are many more platforms. So we know obviously Netflix and Amazon. And I think that opens a lot of doors. Because as you said, there are so many things happening, like there are many ways to get around things. But I think the most important thing is to know what your project really is about and what your vision is. For instance, if your vision is that your film really is set, maybe I speak a bit for myself, but if it's supposed to be set in an era, like the 60s or sometime in the past, you know that there are things you can't compromise with, like the locations, or even the hair, the makeup. Maybe you can compromise a little bit with hair and makeup if it's modern, but if it's not, then you can't, because it won't look realistic. So then it becomes part of something essential. And so if this is essential to you, Then, as a director, then for sure you really need to make sure in your budget you have the right lines so that you really raise the exact money you need, and also that you have contingency, because I think it's a line that's forgotten, really neglected
Way too often,
much.
yeah.
So that's really important. And then you work with it, which means that there are many ways to fund money. It's always hard, private investment, public investment, crowdfunding, there are many ways today. But what is important is that, for instance, a film can make maybe 12, 20 years sometimes to get funded. Some will take only 6 months. But what's really important is that you only start filming when you know that you have what you need, not to compromise too much with it. If it needs to wait more time, maybe it's better to leave it a little bit and wait and be patient and maybe do another film that, without compromising with your vision, can happen in only one location, because that's less budget. And it's a great way to learn too. So I think really those ladies are really true, are really right. There are more ways to do things, and also more distribution ways, I guess, because I think the rise of those platforms definitely enable filmmakers to have a voice. When before when there were only 1, 2, 3 channels, there was less content. But now with all those platforms, it's a very big opportunity for us indie filmmakers. So that's a good thing to know. And the second thing is really to be creative and know what you can compromise and not compromise with.
Do you have any more questions? Yes, you.
I have a question for all of you. I'm teaching a class called Writing the Short Script at Emerson in Professional Studies, and a question that everyone's going to have is, how do I know when my script is ready to produce? Because as you said, it's so much money, it's so much time, it's energy, it's favors. How do you know when you've gotten to that place? How did you know when you were ready to say, let's make this a movie?
Andrea told me I was done. I think for me, like, you feel it. If everything is finally clicked into place, and you have a full story, you have characters, and your vision is solid in your head. And Andrea tells you.
Send it to me. For me, if you don't mind me jumping in.
Please.
For me, what I find is it tends to be, to Diana's point, you feel it, but I think it's, a lot of times when you're reading back your script, I find that there's parts where you just don't feel, you just keep rewriting one part over and over again because it doesn't feel right, and I feel like a lot of times, sometimes your dialogue is still clunky there, or sometimes your, the movement that you're thinking about for the scene isn't quite right. And sometimes you can't get it to come to fruition. Sometimes you just can't get the dialogue to feel quite right. And I think a lot of times you can keep changing that script as you move into production. And I found collaboration with my actors is a huge part of the script writing process once I get in there. And a lot of times a line that I could not get right is right once an actor takes it and is saying it in their own style, or saying it with their own performance and adjusting the words to their comfort level. And sometimes that's all it needs. So I would say once your script is 90% where you like it is a good place. 80% where you like it maybe, if you think you're going to have a long production process and you have more time to write. But I think once you know that the bare bones are there, and you know that there's parts that you're not going to, the people aren't going to change, the locations aren't going to change, just the details, it's a good place to start production, because there's still, those elements are the elements you want sealed in before you start going into production. And the rest is a lot of collaboration with your performers and trusting them to make this character.
So if you guys can tell us where we can find you online, and if you guys are working on any upcoming projects.
Sure, so you can find me at aleciabatson.com, where you'll see mainly references to my performance output and not necessarily this type of work, but perhaps I should create a page that's devoted for works that are site-specific or that are designed for installation. I'm not sure, like, in terms of, do you mean in terms of what's upcoming in film, or?
Yeah, like, are you working on any other projects, or do you have anything else circulating?
In terms of film, I don't have any personal projects that are circulating, like, this is the only project that I've got. I am researching ways to try to find locations that are correct for the looped installation version of this project. But if there are other opportunities to show it as an experimental film, then I certainly welcome those.
And working with
Yeah, same. Well, I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, so it's quite easy to find me. On Instagram, it's Jenna Suru, and on Facebook, Twitter, Jenna Suru. My company is called Belle Epoque Film. It's a French official feature film company. The company website is www.belleepoquefilm.com. And in terms of upcoming projects, I was hired as a director, and I was also cast as the lead in a British comedy horror. So that's quite exciting. Yeah, it's quite a different genre, so I'm really excited about it. And also I'm writing another peer drama.
On all the social media, I'm at Diana M. Porter, and my website is dianaporteractress.com. I have a few films out in the film festival circuit as an actor, and some commercials coming out soon. And I just wrapped on what I think is going to be a really fantastic horror movie called The Shade. They're saying 2021, but it's going to be 2020 that it comes out. And I am going to be directing at least one more film this year. So we'll see how that goes.
So I am also on all the social media, and you can find me by typing my last name if you can remember it, which is Wolanin, W-O-L-A-N-I-N, and I am usually one of 3 Wolanins on there, and my first name is Andrea, so not Tyler, that's the other one. There is another Andrea Wolanin on Pinterest, but I'm the one with the creepy Pinterest boards, not the teaching middle school Pinterest boards. And coming up, that's right, I'm writing a feature script and producing other people's stuff or working on it.
Awesome. All right. Thank you guys for coming.